imagine you running a lemonade stall. You would at least go and count how many lemonades I sold, how much money did I make, how much money did I spend.
How a new e-commerce founder could use data analytics to actually drive the top line and the bottom.
You spent more today because prices of lemons have gone up. Or you did not sell enough today because it rained, people were just not thirsty enough to drink more lemonade. That is analytics. Any business which feels they don't need analytics, what they are essentially doing is they are taking the data themselves. You cannot run a tech company without having a tech platform. I really want these numbers to be wrong. It changed the way we looked at that event, and it changed how an organization does their biggest annual event.
Two questions basically. What are the trends that you're seeing in the e-commerce industry? Where do you think it will sort of go to, and how do you keep pace with it?
Buying and selling is the oldest trade. Today, we just changed the plan. I want to buy a goat, you are only selling cows, doesn't help. Now, how does the new customer get acquired? That store owner will likely come to your home one day and say, I was just delivering next door. I heard you are a new person who's moved in. It is exactly the same story. And that's where I think e-commerce as an industry values the journey of data so much. How does a e-commerce assure you get things delivered so quickly? They picked cues. Acha, this person has walked in with the mother, is shopping for a wedding. He doesn't know whether you like a yellow or an orange. What he has seen is people like this who come into his store usually buy a yellow or orange more. This is exactly what an e-commerce company is trying to do.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Decoding with Jaslin. Today I'm incredibly excited to introduce our guest Indrani Goswami, the Director of Analytics at Nykaa. Beyond her impressive title, she is also a friend and a very strong inspiration to me. With over 14 years of experience spanning e-commerce and fintech, Indrani has a deep expertise in leveraging data to drive growth, understand consumer behavior, and product dynamics. And that is what we will be diving into today, the world of data analytics in the dynamic realm of e-commerce. We will not only be discussing how data is shaping strategies in e-commerce and the latest trends, but also Indrani's own career path and her advice on how to build a successful career in data analytics. And with that, let's get started, and a very warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much, Jaslin. It's never, it's always so strange when friends introduce you in a very formal way, but you did it so gracefully, and I'm so grateful that you kept it so lucid and so natural. So thank you so much, and I'm so excited. I'm so proud of you for doing this. I watched all the episodes. I am so happy to be doing this with you on a Sunday morning.
That's really nice and heartwarming to hear, Indrani. Okay, I think we can jump into the topics because the kind of people we are, we'll end up talking a lot more than that is planned. So let's get started, right? So the field of data analytics, right? I want to understand how you got into it. Was it something you always wanted to? What was your journey like getting into this? You started as an analyst, I believe, in Wipro, right? And how did you what was your journey from childhood to that? What it triggered that?
Sure. I think when I was growing up, nobody heard about the term analytics, at least in my realm of the world, right? See, I was a decent student. I would do well in exams and all. And it was around I think in my ninth standard that I mustered all the courage I could, and I told my parents that I don't want to study sciences because biology is not for me. Frogs are something I'm icky about, and chemistry, I don't even understand why are you so interested in iron and minerals and all that. I don't care. Physics is good, but then nobody's just gonna give me physics and maths. So guess what? This is not something I'm gonna do. My parents were extremely supportive about that, and I chose to take up commerce in my 11th and 12th standard. Now, that also has a very interesting reason for it. So, I studied till my 10th standard in the West Bengal board. And in West Bengal, a very, I would say, coveted combination, apart from the sciences is to go with economics, statistics, and mathematics, which is why you see so many people in the early days of analytics and data science coming from Bengal. This has been a pretty coveted combination in most schools in Bengal for the 11th and 12th standard. And that's what I wanted to do as well. Interesting part is, out of it, mathematics was the only thing I studied. I'd never studied economics. I'd never studied statistics. So I thought, because I suck at everything else that I do in till the 10th board, maybe these two I'll be good at. So let me do these two. Right? That's how it kind of panned out. But then, they call destiny, they call serendipity. The day I was getting my 10th board results, I was standing behind someone in the queue who I'd never spoken to in all my 10 years in school, and I somehow decided to speak to her. And she said that she's joining the CBSE board, a different school, where she's getting commerce and she's getting maths with it, a pure maths combination. My draw was the fact that you wouldn't have to study Bengali. And I was really bad at Bengali. So that was my draw. And I had inquired earlier about studying commerce in my school, in other schools as well. The problem is in West Bengal board, no school gives you commerce along with pure maths, at least in my time. So it used to be only accounting and business math. And I felt that okay, that's going to limit my chances when I moved to college. So I wanted like more mathematics. So I did whatever little calculation I could do in my head. I came running back home and I said, I want to go and study in that school. Parents obviously were like, when is this girl going to stop coming at us? Lo and behold, in 48 hours, I have moved schools. I went to a different school where the first interaction I had with the principal was, you have good marks. Why don't you do sciences? And I said, sir, I want to study commerce. If you want to give me commerce, give me, or I'm not coming. So I did a lot of that, that faux pas. And then for 11th and 12th, I studied commerce. I quite liked the way the CBSE structure was for commerce, like, the syllabus. Not only did we do accountancy and business studies pretty detailed, we also had a very, very strong curriculum on economics. And that's where my love for economics kind of came in. And pure maths. So I did economics, pure maths, accountancy, and business studies in 12th. After 12th, it was a very, very clear decision for me that I want to study economics. So that's how I got into economics. I did my bachelor's and my master's in Jadavpur. Once I finished my college is known to create academicians, right? They create all scholars and PhDs, and a lot of my classmates now teach at a Stanford or an MIT. I wanted to go the corporate routes, which was a huge disappointment for a lot of my professors. We used to have a pretty, I would say, lean placement at that time. There was barely any companies which would come in. So for economics department, we only had like 2 companies which came in, and Wipro was one of them. And I got placed from college, and that's how my journey with analytics started. So sorry about the long drawn answer, but
No, no, not at all.
this would give you a lot of clarity on how I landed here by accident.
No, but it is so interesting, right? Because everyone, especially in the field of tech or analytics, make a big fuss about taking science, right? But you have been an exception to the rule and done so well in that field. So I think it's definitely a story that is really good to be put out there for students who are struggling with science. Because I mean, I took science, but I didn't take bio because of the same thing. I really struggled with biology. Chemistry, I think I sucked through for 2 years, literally, sort of, putting together every ounce of my energy to understand or at least manage somewhat of all the compounds that we have to learn and the actual reactions in there. But yeah, I mean, I think this is really good for you to share, because a lot of in India there is this immense pressure on kids to take science, because commerce, generally people assume either you have to become a CA or you're just not good at studies, and that's why you're taking commerce. You're not ambitious enough or whatever. But you have been such an exception to that rule, and that's really nice for you to share that story. Now you said, like, you moved from your masters in economics to actual job. Whatever you studied, right? Like, did you feel that it actually came to use when you started, or you started ground up?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Um, See, when I first started working, I realized that there is something called coding. Now I have no clue what it means, right? Because nobody has ever taught me coding. And I also, did not do any like in school. You have these computer sciences courses, right? Elective studies or something. Now somehow, whether till 10th, wherever I studied, we didn't have this, and then 11th and 12th when I came in, it was not available for commerce students, so I didn't do it. So I had no idea, so I had to learn that. Coding was something which was completely new to me. I had no idea what it entailed. So that was a fun thing to learn. So SQL was something I started with, and then in my days we used to do SAS and all of that. So I kind of learned that. What helped me was that in economics I have studied econometrics very very thoroughly, and in fact, in masters my specialization was in finance and econometrics. So
Okay.
really helped me hit the ground running, because a lot of my problem solving would be around uh, classification problems, time series problems, which are things I've learned theoretically. So
Right.
obviously the theoretical aspect, when that gets translated into the practicality, there is a difference. You don't always see that panning out exactly the same way. But the fact that you have a theoretical knowledge towards it, I think that really helps. The third thing that I would say really helps is, see, there's a lot of debate and a lot of institutes have their own ways. Is economics a science? Is economics, a stream of arts? Is economics a stream for commerce? There's always this question. My favorite definition of economics is that it's a behavioral science, because eventually how money moves um, is so uh, dependent on factors which are immensely human, immensely social, and are manifested in ways which are economical, financial, political, geopolitical, and all of that, right? So that's the part of economics I love the most. And that is the part which requires you to do a lot of logical reasoning. Simple things like, how does a monetary policy impact the bond yields? These require you to have very logical reasoning. And that is a part which I think has really shaped my cognitive thinking towards analytics. So those are the things I have leveraged from my education towards job. But
Towards your
obviously
job.
you learn a lot as you
Of
start work.
course. No, I think I really resonate with you on that, right? Like, to be honest, like I said, I was a science student, and then I really loved physics and mathematics. And to be honest, when I started college, I pretty much thought maybe I'll go into research. I wasn't very sure. I didn't really enjoy studying physics and mathematics during my graduation. It was, a bit more syllabus oriented rather than, I like the application part of it, and that wasn't like how the syllabus was planned. So I didn't enjoy it that much, but I think it's the same thing, like you said, right? Like, I actually then went and did my MBA in finance, and then joined Infosys to start with. And I have same way, right? No idea about what coding is, but I think it's the thinking, right? The way you think, the logical reasoning and all of that, that then really comes to use when you get into a tech space, right? Because that understanding of how X plus Y can get to Z is basically what you're trying to do even in coding, right? You're just trying to figure out how an equation can result in this. And that's what you do before that. So I totally resonate with that, because I feel like I'm not an engineer, but I've been in the tech space, and I feel like the only reason I think I have been able to make sense of it is because I've always resonated with logic, and that's basically what, even in the tech space is. It's logical reasoning, right? And yeah, I think the way you put behavioral, like economics as a behavioral science is really, it actually makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, you can see it literally playing out in the world right now.
Exactly, right? Like why is it that tariffs from one country tanks markets everywhere? What are markets? They are so sentiment driven, right? Who are the winners among
Right.
the ones who can get above the sentiment and stay disciplined? And all of this is behavioral science. So that's the reason I'm still an ardent student of economics, and I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I totally understand where you're coming from. Now, if someone like today, right now, data analytics has become a big field, everyone knows about it. And especially with AI, everyone's talking more and more about data because you don't have good data, you don't have good AI, right? So, how do you feel like now if someone has to get into the data analytics realm, what would be your, say top three skills that they probably need to have? Would you con- give them a different, would you advise them on a different education route? Like what would your advice be to like people who are trying to get into this industry now?
Hmm. So here's my understanding, right? See, over the years, we've seen this industry massively change. Um, and the way an analytics organization, a data analytics organization is positioned today in any organization is very different from what it was when I started. When I started off, I used to have a hard time explaining people that we are not a KPO or a BPO, right? Because that was the thought process that, oh, somebody needed numbers crunch, somebody needed being told how many customers shopped with you. They will come to you, you will tell them how many customers are shopped with you. Today, that's not the ask of analytics. There are organizations who understand that their differentiation comes from data. The entire USP is knowing their data really well and be able to take decisions based on it. So there is a strategic angle that has become way stronger for analytics today. So I don't think today it is just about what background you come from,
Mm-hmm.
what have you studied in the past. Uh, yes, there are some fundamental skill sets. You are going to, when you come into analytics, you're going to learn coding because that's the language in which you interact with data. That is becoming simpler and simpler as we go along the way because there is so much of productivity tools that have come in. Learning coding has become so much easier. Coding itself has become so much easier today. So I wouldn't say you have to be specifically from a certain field for you to, in fact, be successful. I have worked with amazing colleagues who have come from humanities, who have come from psychology, who have done such different things, and they have aced their careers in analytics. The one key ingredient, irrespective of what you have studied and what you have done to be successful in analytics, is to be analytical. And in order to be analytical, the very fundamental thing is to be logical, is to be able to break down a problem into its core, being able to think in first principles, being able to understand what is the fundamental problem that you're solving, and be able to logically approach it. Data is your tool to solve the problem. Data is your medium to solve the problem. One of the In fact, I would use this opportunity to also call out one of the perils that I often see, right? Particularly with young analysts. We take our jobs as, my job is to query the data and throw the output at you. The querying part of the data is just your way to interact with the data, and the data is your medium to solve a problem. And a successful analytics professional is never going to think only from a data standpoint. A successful analytics professional is going to understand the business. They're going to understand the domain. They're going to understand the market. They're going to understand what are the goals and objectives they're going to, the company is trying to fulfill. And they are going to use data as a medium to give answers to the company and also make us ask questions which were not asked earlier. So my advice would be, irrespective of the field you come from, this is one field where you have to learn constantly. So it really doesn't matter if you come from, aeronautical engineering. uh, you will keep learning new things, whether it is in terms of coding, whether it is in learning the fundamentals of problem solving. Few things, if you pick up quickly, really helps. Uh, as I said, coding is one of them. Fundamental of statistics is one of them. When you're trying to make sense of such scale of data, statistics is a very, very good friend to have. um, Things like design thinking really helps, because they really help you put in perspective how to do a good problem solving, keeping the customer in mind, keeping the end user in mind. And some basic understanding of maybe data flows, data architectures, that just helps you interact with the data better. Eventually, after all of this, the best part about our jobs is there is no formula. You get a problem, it's an open ended thing, you use your logical thinking and you solve it. So come with an open mind. That's the first thing.
Got it. Now, you mentioned that you will eventually obviously have to learn some coding languages, and there are tools in the market, right? Can you, talk about a few coding languages that would be an asset for people to come in, who are coming in, and also some tools that you said, like, could be useful for them to understand that better or interact with the data better.
I think today's world, Python and SQL are the two most important things. And for
Okay.
Python and SQL, there are, I would say, millions of free resources available in YouTube. In fact, these days, ChatGPT and Gemini does an amazing job of teaching you Python and SQL, uh, teaching you the fundamentals. Coursera,
Right.
amazing courses. Just go knock yourself out, do a few courses. Super easy to learn. Uh, I also would say, today, um, we are in that debate, right? Whether we should allow our educational curriculum to let students use a chat GPT or a Gemini, right? My take on that is, in today's world, even to learn something, you have to know how to prompt the AI tool better, right?
That is true.
That's a
Yeah.
skill to learn. And an AI tool is extremely good in teaching you coding. It's super simple. In fact, a lot of times these days we see people just, upload their queries and asks ChatGPT or Gemini to debug it. Please be careful about all the regulatory aspects of it.
Aspects around it. Yeah.
But it's a very good tool to learn. It's a very good platform to learn. So today, I don't think learning coding should be a difficult job at all.
Understood. That makes sense. Yeah, yeah. I know a lot of people now, who use these, like you said, give them scenarios and understand what could potentially be the best sort of route around it. What I've also seen in your career is that you have, switched domains, right? And I understand, how did you sort of, because it takes time for you to, like, it is necessary for you to understand the domain to make sense of the data, right? If you don't understand the domain, yes, you have this huge amount of data in front of you. How do you make sense of it? So how have you sort of navigated that path, right? Because that's something I believe a lot of people sometimes struggle with. They might be really good at the tech part of it, but they don't understand the business aspect of it. How have you been able to marry the two?
Sure. I think there are two parts to your question. The first part is probably understanding how I shifted domains, and the second part is the whole marriage between business and
Correct.
data. So let me go to the first part and then kind of come to the second one. So I started my career with Wipro, where I was working with the advanced analytics team, and my client was in retail domain. So my first 3 years, I learned about brick and mortar retail in US, because my client was US based. So those are the kind of retailers which we had not seen in India at that time. So it's hard to imagine retailers who would sell everything from soap to card, right? That's the kind of expertise I kind of got there, learning about retail. And then I moved into banking. So I did like traditional banking for around 6 years, and that was where I learned very, very fundamental banking products, whether it is deposits, it is mortgages. I've done a lot of work on credit cards. In fact, in one of my stints, my last 1.5 years in city, I had the privilege of building a team which was doing P&L forecasting for one of the biggest co-branded cards that we had acquired. And the fun part was, we had acquired that, so which meant that it used to be with someone else, and we had just gotten them on with us. And you had to learn how to build P&L forecasting for a business which was never there with you. So you forecast based on the past. You have no past data because whoever you have acquired it from is not going to give you that data. So it was a lot
Right.
of learning, intricacies of how credit cards work, intricacies of how credit card charges work. So that was a lot of good learning that I did. And after that, I spent around another 5 years or so fundamentally doing a lot of interesting work in fintech. So I've done small business lending. I've done buy now, pay later, small business credit cards, line of credit. So both on the B2C and the B2B space. So anytime when someone asks me, oh, B2B versus B2C, in my head, I'm still like, yeah, the products change, but your reasoning doesn't. When all of this was getting done and I was doing all these interesting stuff, that's when my current opportunity came along. And in my head, I was like, yeah, why not? This is a space I know nothing about as a professional, but I am intimately aware of as a user. I've used Nykaa for a long time. I've always been a customer. And when you get a chance to work with an organization which you have used so much, so you've sat on the other side of the table and you have so many observations, and then you get a chance to work and kind of think from the ones who have built the platform. I think it was an amazing opportunity. um, Long story short, I think I love making my own life difficult, which is why switching domains. The moment I feel I'm doing a little better somewhere, I just feel like, okay, let me kick myself out and do something else. And that's how this came along. Uh, Now, answering the second part of your question, marrying business to data. See, if you just look at data, you will see numbers and tables, which beyond a point is boring. And the only way to have a strategic influence with the data that you come with is for you to know what the data says. I I'm a core believer that all of us humans, and it might sound very philosophical, but all of us humans exist because we all want to say stories. We love stories. We want to communicate with stories. We want our stories to be heard. I don't think there is any better profession than analytics which will give me an opportunity to do that. I take a data, I look at a number. What may appear like a 5% to you can be a completely different story for me because I know what this 5% increment in revenue means for my business. And that storytelling can only happen if you understand the business. So as an analytics professional, yes, we really need to understand our data well. How do I query the data? How do I structure the data? In fact, your early formative years are going to be spent honing that skill. It is that very fundamental skill. It's like, I don't know how to walk, how would I run? So this is the skill you're learning, which is walking. But if you want to enjoy this field, if you want to get to a point where this is what really excites you, you would have to get to a point of understanding the business. So putting in the effort of spending time with the people who bring in the business, who work with the P&Ls of the business, who work with the expansion of the business is important for you to make sense of the data that you see and put it in the context of the business.
Right. And how like in very actionable simplistic terms, right? So when you like switched from one domain to another, how did like would you just sit with these people and try and understand like how did you actually go about it? Because yeah, people try to spend time, but how did you literally do it? In terms of, and how long did it take you for you to sort of get a comfortable grasp on the domain that okay, now what I'm saying I'm confident about, like because initially you might not know the domain.
Sure. So, see, I think every time I have moved domains. And even within financial services, when you move from, let's say, mortgages to credit card, or when you move to fintech who's doing like small business lending, every one of these are domain shifts in a way. Um, I've tried spending a lot of time understanding the product in general. What is it that I'm selling? If I talk about a small business lending, a line of credit, what does it really mean? How does it work? And for that, I don't have to just know it from my company's context. I can just know it, the product as itself, right? Like, what does a corporate
Hmm.
credit card mean? How does it operate? So having that curiosity to understand what you sell is very critical. So that is the first thing. So that are all the research that I do independently. The next
Got
thing
it.
I do when I get through the door is figuring out what are the KPIs of the business. Because see, if you just approach someone, um, let's say from a business team, and you just say, "Hey, tell me about your business," they would struggle to explain, right? Because this is something they live and breathe every day. How do I explain to you what I live and breathe every day? But let's say I know your KPIs, and I just go and tell a business head that, hey, I've just joined, I've been looking at your books, and I see your loss rates are high by 5%. Can you talk to me about it? So now you have started the conversation in a very objective manner. Now, the moment they start telling you about why they think their loss rates have increased is when you get a foot through the door and you start probing, oh, hang on, you said bucket roll rates have increased. What do you mean by that? How does bucket roll rates increase? Acha, okay, so this is how you actually lend. Can you tell me a little about how do you choose these customers who to lend with? So I have an approach where I start with the KPI and I work backwards. It just helps me get attention better. It just helps me get people to help me more, right? That's something I do. Uh, may or may not work with everyone. But even when I joined here at Nykaa, e-commerce is a completely new space. And I remember the first 1 month that I was here at Nykaa, every meeting I learned a new abbreviation. We use a lot of abbreviations. These are industry abbreviations. Like, if today you work with a Flipkart or an Amazon or a Misho, all of them will use these abbreviations. But I never heard them in the financial space. So, I would spend so much time just jotting them down that this is what it means. And I eventually realized, these are fun. These are very standard industry terms. So let's just go and read up a little bit about it. But what I was obsessed about is spending time with my own team members and figuring out what are the KPIs. Once I know the KPIs, it was much easier for me to approach somebody from that standpoint and have a conversation that, hey, is this KPI going up or down good for you? It can be
Right.
as basic a question as that. Hey, I'm going to play my newbie card. I don't know anything about the domain. Now that you guys have hired me, you have to make me productive. So can you please tell me if this KPI going up or down is bad for you? So that's how I have you put in a lot of effort. I will not be lying about that. It's not going to be a cakewalk, but you should be okay to ask questions.
I think that's a very good approach, Indrani, because you do know data, right? That's something you know. So you use that to come up with some KPIs and then go hit the people who are responsible for those KPIs with those questions. And and to your point, yeah, that sort of forces them to give a very clear objective answer and walk you through that journey of why those KPIs are there and whether it is good or bad and what are sort of what should the future potentially look like, right? I think
Exactly.
that's
If I just walk into a business head's room and I say, hey, can you tell me about your business? I mean, I'm just putting them in a spot, right? Because it's so typical. If somebody today asks me, explain analytics, it's so hard for me. But if you start with an objective question, I can then expand it further into a more, into a more bloody conversation, and people are more open to it at that point because they feel invested in helping you get on board. So
yeah.
I feel like, that's an approach which has worked well for me.
Yeah. And I think like if you just go ask a generic question, you may not even get the kind of attention and the kind of answer you're looking for. For all you know, they might just give you like a two-line answer and walk away. Right. But
It's not because they don't want to help. A lot of time it's because they don't know what you're really
what are
looking
you
for.
looking for?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Might as well go with something objective, which may sound very trivial at that point, but it just opens doors for conversation. So any new people coming in, I always encourage that please don't be scared to ask questions.
Right, right. No, I think that's great advice, right? For anyone who's switching domains, go with what you understand and then ask questions from that, and then make sense of the domain.
And in fact, wherever possible, if you can draw connections to the previous domain that you have worked with, like in e-commerce, what I realized is there's one piece I know, I would say slightly better than a lot of people around, and that is payment gateways. My previous stint was at Razorpay, right? And uh, every time I would work with any team member from, let's say, the payments team, they would say that, oh, our gateways are down. I would immediately be the expert in the room telling them, oh, guess what? If this gateway is down, this is how you should be routing and this is what you should be doing. So you are making connections to your past experiences, which is building your credibility. I understand data. So I am going to use data to open the doors for me. And then I'm going to keep asking questions. So, find out what is familiar, use your strength, which is in this case for me was data, and then keep
Right.
asking questions and combine all three of this with your own research.
That's like a really good approach, Indrani. The other thing I wanted to know is what are the typical challenges, right, that you would face in a data analytics industry, or sort of the biggest challenges that people typically face, right? What and how have you gone about it?
Hmm. See, I think one thing which I have always seen with most data and analytics teams that it is extremely easy to become a cerebral team with minimal strategic impact. What I mean by that is, uh, it's a team which loves doing all the cool stuff. It loves doing all cool analysis, building cool models, and all of that, but fails to communicate how that is going to move any business lever.
Right.
Anytime I have worked with any analytics team where I have seen that there is a struggle to get a seat at the table, uh, it is because I did not walk in with the right chair. And in this case, it was because I did not tell the business that all the cool stuff that I do is not because I'm getting bored. I am doing it because it really moves the needle for the business. So, that to me is a fundamental change in approach that any data and analytics professional should do. We consider ourselves a tech organization and we say, oh, what we do is very complicated for um, the business folks to understand. I'm sure you would have also heard a lot about it. um, my job is to uncomplicate it for you.
Correct.
If I think of my job that way, that you know all of us want to have a say and influence in how an org can be shaped up. All of us want to work for the organization, for the goals of the company. The way I can do that is by taking the piece, the function that I am responsible for, but tying it back to the mothership. You can't
Right.
just take your stuff, build a cool planet of your own and just orbit around that, right? Like then you're just building your own galaxy. You have to tie it back to the business. You have to tie it back to the goals of what the business wants to achieve. And I think that is a very big skill, which if you learn, your talent is also going to get a lot more recognized. There are, of course, other functional challenges that I see in an organization, in any analytics team. See, there has to be a lot of prudence around how teams are structured. uh, there's always this debate that I have seen whether analytics teams should be centralized versus decentralized. You have to take a call based on the maturity of the business, based on what is the exact need of the business, the kind of skill sets your people have. It's also important to make sure that there is a lot of impact estimation that teams like analytics can do. See, it's extremely easy to look at analytics as a cost function only because, oh, it's a group of people who gives us data. How does an analytics team mature into becoming a revenue contributor? How does an analytics team mature into becoming a significant strategic partner? That is an important aspect, and it depends a lot on the kind of people you have, the sort of upskilling that you do, the connect to the business objectives that you have, the impact estimation that you can do, and your ability to communicate the story in the right manner. Analytics, in my opinion, has two major roles to play in any organization. You are a strategic player, you are a strategic enabler, you're also a governance and audit body. We often forget that role. I have heard this a lot from a lot of colleagues I've worked with in the past that, oh, it's so boring to build MISs. You are right. Building the report or building the MIS is a boring job. It's a grunt work. But what your job is not just to build it, but to internalize it, to consume it yourself, and be able to call out to the company if you see discrepancies in numbers being reported, not having a single source of truth, and not being able to validate numbers. These are fundamental challenges, and these are something which an analytics team absolutely has to own. You have to be a governance body. You have to be able to tell the company that, hey, you cannot define KPI X in this way. These are the reasons. This is the only source of truth to be used. This is what gives you credibility. And I feel we often don't pay attention to this enough. So these are, I think, some of the things which an analytics team can see as a pitfall, and these are the opportunity areas.
I think that's very well put in, Rani. I can totally imagine, like, especially like the tech folks sort of getting carried away by the number crunch of it and forgetting about, the actual strategic importance of that, of that team being there. So that's like today, right? There are a lot of startups around, especially in the e-commerce industry, right? A lot of people are trying to get into that space, right? And I think often people don't want to build a data analytics team is because of this assumption, especially when they're starting out, that they will just be a group of people sitting in their own planet doing number crunching and may not really, maybe we don't need it, right? Or whatever. What would you say could be um like if you could give some examples of potentially how a new e-commerce founder could use data analytics to actually uh you know drive the top line and the bottom line, sort of?
Sure. I think no company can exist without knowing how their day-to-day performances are. I mean, imagine you running a lemonade stall for that matter, right? You would at least go and count how many lemonades I sold, how much money did I make, how much money did I spend making
Correct.
make this. That is analytics. That is the fundamental, right? So you are looking for measurements. So that is the first role of an analytics, a body which measures things for you. Then comes the question of, I spent 100 rupees to make 200 rupees today. Is that good? Is that bad? Am I supposed to spend less? How can I spend less? How can I make more? Now, then comes the next role of analytics, which is making sense of the data, being able to give you the correlations and the causalities. You spent more today because prices of lemons have gone up, or you did not sell enough today because it rained, people were just not thirsty enough to drink more lemonade. That is, again, analytics, right? Now, hey, I'm selling it in HSR. Now I want to go and sell it in Sarjapur. Where should I go and sell? Should I even go to Sarjapur and sell, for that matter of fact, right? That is where you are now looking for the predictive power of analytics. That, what is a good space for me to go and sell in? Is there a market there? Do people in Sarjapur like lemonade, or they only drink the beer from breweries, right? So all of that is, if you see today, any business which feels they don't need analytics, what they are essentially doing is they are taking the data themselves, they are crunching it themselves, and they're trying to make the same sense without getting the guys
Right.
who are expertly trained to do it. So the point I'm trying to make is, just like you cannot run a tech company without having a tech platform, you cannot run
Mm-hmm.
a business without knowing data. Now, you may be adept enough to do it yourself, and you feel that I don't need an expert team, which is great, but you are probably going to be the CEO of a company and you're caught up in a lot of other things as well. So I don't know how much of depth will you be able to provide on a day-to-day basis. So I don't fundamentally agree to the point when someone says I don't need analytics. If you tell me you don't need analytics, which tells me you're not checking your wallet every day, right? Which I don't think any business owner does.
I think that makes sense. Yeah, you're right. I think the if you don't have an analytics team, you're probably doing it yourself. And
You're doing it.
you're
There's
yeah,
no
yeah, yeah,
not
you're
doing
right.
it and being in business, right? You are trying to make sense of how much I sold, where I sold, what could I do better, where can I save costs. So up kar rahe ho. You're doing all of that.
That's
You
correct.
just don't want to
You
call
just don't have experts doing it. Rather, you just have the whole organization
it.
probably do.
Today you may not need someone, but tomorrow you might be scaling to a point where you need a team, right? I just hope business owners are open to that thought.
Got it, got it, got it. Makes sense, Indrani. Have there been like some situations where the strategies you like after learning data, the sort of assumptions that you drew, or the sort of business strategy that you came up with, which has like completely shocked business, like something that really, really blew their minds off, like, okay, this was happening or this could be a path. Have there been situations like that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think those are the dopamine hits you live for, right? Um,
Are there any examples you can share?
yeah,
Keeping it gen.
yeah. Without getting into details, I'm going to maybe give you a couple of examples. So one of the organizations I have worked with in the past, um, we used to do, a big, I would say, consider it an event. It's not really a sale, but just consider it an event of sorts, which we used to do, where we would encourage customers to come, sign up, use our app, get some money off and all of that. And we all used to consider that to be a huge success. Every year this would happen and this would be a huge success. It would be celebrated. There would be media press releases in terms of, okay, this is how many new customers we acquired, this is how much revenue we made during this time, and so on and so forth. And this organization was, uh, I wouldn't say very mature, but again, not a very, very young organization. So there is a history of this happening for quite some time. And then my team kind of took up the responsibility of doing a true up impact measurement. So we said,
Okay.
okay, whenever we look at this event, it's like a very happy feeling for us to see how much numbers we crunch. But let us get into the details of it and see the money we spend doing this event, is that justified? And is there anything that we need to do better? Because right now I'm only measuring the top line impact. I'm not measuring
Right.
the bottom line impact of this event. So is there a true incremental that I get out of this event? And this was an event which has been successfully running for more than 5 years. And my team at that organization was just about a year old. We were less than, in fact, a year old. We had just set up this team and stuff. Um, and we came back saying that you bleed money. You basically make nothing. You spend way more than you make. And we kind of gave them evidence that if you were to not do this in this way, this is how much you're going to earn. And I think when we initially came up with those results, and I still remember, and we kind of, I think we went through that same number maybe 20 odd times to make sure that is it correct? Because it's like something was lying in front of our face. And,
Right.
we are one of the youngest team in the company right now. Um, are you sure nobody has checked this in the past? Are you sure
Yeah.
nobody knows this? Are we making a mistake? So I think I went through stages of grilling my team to the extent that, I kind of sat with the queries myself just to make sure that everything is correct, and which it was. And we finally started circulating this to the senior management. And, I still remember presenting this to the CEO, and just watching his face in the Zoom meeting, like he was looking at me bewildered, like, it was like, and then very rightly, his question was, "Are you sure his number is correct?" And I was like, "I've gone through it 20 times. If you want to do the 21st time, please do, because I really want these numbers to be wrong, but they're not wrong. We are bleeding money. We should stop doing this event." And it it was discussed, debated. It became like it changed the way we looked at that event. And we didn't stop doing it because obviously, as a company which has set precedence of doing an event like that, you don't want to stop it. But we changed how we approached it, completely overhauled it. And I spent some time with the company, and when I left, and even now, I have very good friends there, and I still kind of sometimes get those insider news. I'm so proud to see that that event has completely changed. The way it's done has changed, and we truly make incrementals today. So to me, every time I go through a moment where I'm like, oh God, I don't have a seat at the table, or this is getting boring or grunt or whatever, this is a story I keep going back to. And this is a story I keep telling people, that it was so obvious. It was lying in front of our eyes. Nobody saw it because nobody was out to measure it. So, this is where we started off from a governance role where we were out to measure it. And we went into a strategic role where we said that this is just not helping, change the way you do it. And it changed how an organization does their biggest annual event. So, yeah, that's one example.
I mean, that's a really cool example. I think that's something that always interests me about the data space, right? That the kind of stories it can tell.
Yeah.
You could be really, really amused and almost taken aback by what data can tell you. I think that's and I'm sure like that's a story which, like you said, you hold on to a lot, as it's a great example of how data can completely pivot strategic initiatives of organizations and guide them towards the right way to do it. um Now, into the e-commerce industry, right? E-commerce has become a big a big sort of it's almost become a part of our lives now, right? Like, it was non-existent at a certain point, and now you have instant commerce and things like that as well, right? So what are, like, in terms of data and data analytics, and like putting that along with e-commerce, what are the sort of trends you're seeing in the market, and how are you seeing it shift, and how do you feel like you tackle, like, because you also mentioned that you have to learn continuously and the market is changing continuously. What are the two questions basically? What are the trends that you're seeing in the e-commerce industry? Where do you think it will sort of go to, and how do you keep pace with it, right? Because people are getting into things that have not been done before, right? How do you sort of in terms of data justify those things and all of that? Yeah, like, yeah, go. I
Sure.
think I asked a couple of questions together, but go ahead.
So, see, here's how I approach it, right? Uh, Buying and selling is the oldest trade humans have done. It started off as a barter system, then currencies came in. Eventually, you had physical places where you could buy and sell and do all that. And today, we've just changed the platform. Instead of having a physical store today, what I have is something digital, and it's placed somewhere out there, but fundamentally there is a buying and selling happening. So the very, very core principle of being able to give your customer what they want doesn't change. I want to buy a goat, you are only selling cows, doesn't help, right? So that is that's the core. It doesn't matter whether it's an e-commerce business, whether it's a retail business, whether it's a whether I'm just selling it somewhere, just in a standalone store or something. This fundamental stays. Now, what has e-commerce changed or enabled is any physical store, any physical form of selling has a physical restriction. I have an amazing store selling something, but nobody from maybe a 200-kilometer radius is going to come and buy from me because it's physically not possible. So,
Right.
what e-commerce has done is broken that barrier. Today, anybody and everyone can buy anything from anywhere. So, it is the scale that e-commerce has unlocked today. So, as you unlock scale, the simple act of buying and selling becomes a lot more complicated. So, let me give you one example. I think all of us have this kind of experience where, when we were growing up, our mothers would suddenly send us in the middle of the day, just run to the store and get a packet of curd.
Or milk. Yeah.
Now, that store owner, that uncle or auntie, has known you since you were a toddler. So the moment they will come, they'll see you come running, they will ask you, what do you want? Curd. This time, what did you run out of? Turmeric. And they would just hand it to you, right? And you would take it, go home, your duties are done. Now, what happened here? Your store owner knows you extremely well. So the know your customer part is very strong. In a physical store, it happened because these are the same customers who kept coming in. So there is a lot of repeat behavior that you have seen. Any new person who comes into the locality, and when they ask their neighbors, hey, which store do I go into? The neighbors say that store is good. The store owner is friendly, gives you good prices, will deliver to your home, all of that. So pricing is sorted, delivery is sorted, assortment is good, experience is good. You've given all of that as a feedback to the new customer. Now, how
Right.
does the new customer get acquired? That store owner will likely come to your home one day and say, I was just delivering next door. I heard you are a new person who's moved in. Can I, if you need something, call me. Huh? This is my number. WhatsApp kar dena. This is how our new age
Correct.
owners behave, right? What are you doing? You're trying to get a new customer. All of this happens the same way in an e-commerce platform. It is exactly the same story. I'm trying to get you a new customer. If any customer comes to me, I'm trying to tell you that you can get whatever you want. If you come to me the next time, I'll say, I remember what you did. So you shopped this the last time. Now I will give you this. Acha, you want it fast? I will make sure you get it fast. See, I'll give you the best possible price. And you know what? I will put it all in a beautiful UI, UX where you will have to do minimal. You just enter your address once. I will remember it for a lifetime. So I'm giving you great customer experience. So all of that, which used to happen very fundamentally in our day-to-day lives, is what is also happening in an e-commerce platform. All that is changing is the scale. And this is where data becomes your unlock. How do you know this about a customer who you don't know physically exists? Now, think of it from an Amazon standpoint. Um, can be anybody for an how does Amazon know that I actually exist? They don't. There is no physical existence that Amazon interacts with. It is the persona of the customer that Amazon interacts with. So this is where data unlocks. Indrani and Jaslin are very similar personas. If Jaslin has come to me and purchased something, Indrani is likely going to be interested in purchasing. That is how Amazon is going to come and tell me, hey, we think you're going to like this. So these unlocks come from data. Finding these pattern comes from data. And that's where I think e-commerce as an industry values the journey of data so much. No e-commerce company can be just a commerce company. We are all fundamentally a tech company. All the successful e-commerce companies fundamentally are tech companies. Because for us, I have no physical customer. What I have is a persona of a customer I interact with. And for me to understand the patterns that that customer generates, and hence 10 other people like her will generate, I will have to use data. So that's how I think, e-commerce will scale using data as we go along.
Got it. Now, quick commerce has become a big thing, right? And there are so many companies which have gotten into it, right? In terms of data, right? Do you feel it is a profitable space for companies to get in? Because especially in the you know especially in the the example that you gave, the curd and the milk scenario, there are now so many options out there, right? Is it really profitable, like from a data standpoint, for companies to get into it?
Your question is whether it is profitable to run an e-commerce company?
A quick commerce.
A quick commerce company. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, see, fundamentally, what differentiates a quick commerce from an e-commerce? It is the speed of delivery, right?
Correct.
Where does a quick commerce How does a quick commerce assure that you get delivered, you get things delivered so quickly? They try to be as close to you. That is why the whole network of dark stores come in. That I am going to estimate demand from different areas, and I am going to identify places where I should put in a dark store or a warehouse of sorts, wherein people can, wherever they order something, it is very, very easily and very quickly available, and they're going to take it and they are going to, deliver it.
Deliver it.
And which also means I have to have products which can be stored, which are, let's say, smaller sizes, simpler to deliver. Imagine trying to deliver an AC in 10 minutes. Now, we are also promising to deliver ACs in 10 minutes, but it's harder, right? It's so much easier for me to deliver you a lipstick in 10 minutes or deliver coriander to you in 10 minutes, right? So, and for any quick commerce company to look at profitability, the unit economics has to work out. You have to have your margins in place because that is what drives your revenue, your top line. Your cost of delivery has to be controlled, which means that you need to have enough presence in the areas that you are serving that you should be able to service them without your cost of delivery bloating. And your dark stores have to be organized in such a way so that you are not over investing, because these dark stores are very expensive. You are either buying them or leasing them, so fixed asset cost goes up a lot. So you are pacing your dark stores in such a way that you are able to do area coverages very well without having a lot of overlap between the dark stores. Imagine trying to have like 3 dark stores in one area versus one in another where there is a significant amount of demand. You are just wasting potential of 3 dark stores, right? So these are the unit economics which any quick commerce company does to understand, profitability. The other aspect is also your cost of customer acquisition, because today what happens is, since this place is so crowded and there are so many competitors, you are always in a pricing game. So, which means your prices have to be controlled. Um, if you are selling way more expensive than what others are selling, you are likely going to lose out on customers. So, acquiring customers is expensive. A quick commerce doesn't have customer loyalty. Uh, I
Yeah.
want groceries, right? I am going to open the Big Basket app, the Instamart, Blinkit, Zepto. I'm going to build a cart. I'm going to see which one gives me the cheapest and fastest. Cheap and fast are the two things on which I will optimize here. And I will place my order. Now, because once I've placed it from Instamart, there is no particular reason for me to keep going to Instamart. So stickiness on quick commerce is not very high, which means your cost of customer acquisition and retention is very high. You have to keep incentivizing me, whether it is through an offer, maybe you give me co-branded cards, because of which I will keep going back to this particular platform, or so on and so forth. So all of this has to be kept in mind when the unit economics are being done. I don't think today it is difficult to be profitable. Uh, it is still a model that is being tested out in terms of how much profitability can this scale up to.
Got it. I think the other thing was now, like, especially again in e-commerce, right? Personalization is something that a lot of e-commerce apps are trying out, right? Some of the examples are potentially, yes, you bought this, so you might want to relook at it. But in terms of data analytics, has it reached a stage where it is, or is, like, how do you think, like, you will go about it in terms of understanding a consumer's taste, right? Is that something that it has reached, or what potentially could be? Because what I'm thinking is, going back to that shop example you gave me, right? If I go to a retail shop, for example, regularly, they will start understanding my taste, and they will potentially tell me, if I've gone to buy a t-shirt or a shirt, they might tell me, you know what, you have, like, because maybe I've gone there 10 times. So the 11th time I go, they might show me only the things which they potentially think I would like, right? I'll be more inclined to buy. Has it reached that stage of understanding and, like, throwing out new options which could potentially be very customized? Is that something that, we are looking towards. And the second aspect of it, which always comes into place with personalization, are also the ethical part of it, right? Because how much are in terms of understanding the customer data and things like that, would what level of ethical considerations are sort of played out over there?
Sure. I think, see, it's the example that you gave me, right? Go to a shop and buy t-shirts. I'll give you one very favorite example that I have for personalization. Go to any of the old markets in any old city, in a Delhi, in a Calcutta. Try buying a sari in any of those old shops. That shopkeeper would not just show you sari when you are selecting. He would have opinion where he will tell you, with your skin color, with your kind of make, with your sort of hair, with how your mother thinks, this is the sari which will go well with you, right?
That's true. Yeah.
Right. Essentially, what did we do? We picked cues from the customer's journey. We picked cues. Acha, this person has walked in with the mother, is shopping for a wedding, is wheatish toned, is medium height, medium build, has curly hair. All our customer profile cues. He uses them. Now, he doesn't know whether you like a yellow or an orange because you are coming to his shop for the first time. What he has seen is people like this who come into his store usually buy a yellow or orange more. And that's when he tells you, you should look at yellow or orange, right? So you have picked up cues from the customer's journey and you're trying to personalize it for the customer. This is exactly what an e-commerce company is trying to do. Now, again, as I said, because there is no physical interaction with the customer, I am looking for cues in your entire journey. When you signed up, did you sign up from Delhi or did you sign up from Bangalore? The two cities fundamentally has different tastes. Uh, did you did you start browsing t-shirts? Did you start browsing Indian wear? Did you start browsing shoes? Are you browsing men's shoes? Are you browsing women's shoes? Because how do I know whether you're a male or a female unless you have told me? And that's where your ethical part of the question comes in. I cannot force customers to give me information. Legally, I cannot force customers. Why does it matter to an Amazon whether you're a male or a female? It shouldn't, right? Now, a lot of time customers are forthcoming with their information because they feel if I tell the company more about me, the company will be able to give me better recommendations, which is what you will
Right.
see in a lot of apps like Sephora. Where customers are happy giving you all these information. I have dry skin, oily skin, acne prone, wheatish. This is my favorite shade of foundation. This is my favorite shade of lipstick, and all that because we believe Sephora will then give me the best possible recommendations. It is also in the customer's interest to get good recommendations because, again, because the scale is so high, imagine how many saris can a physical retail store have, and then
Right.
let's make it infinite x, right? That's how much an e-commerce store can actually have for you. So even I as a customer want to be recommended well because I cannot go through your all the shelf and see what you have stored for me, right? So recommendations and personalization is an extremely fundamental pillar of any e-commerce company. And this is where I think data plays a huge role. How else will you stitch a customer's journey? How else would you know what they want? How else would you know, what is the right thing to recommend? Say you have only come to me and you have only bought a pair of jeans. Now, is I want you to buy more from me. So the next time you come, if I just show you jeans, you may not be interested because you'll be like, I've just bought a jeans. So now what to show you along with the jeans? Are you a male? Are you a female? Should I show you a male kurta or should I show you a female top? Do you like formal tops? Do you like casual ones? That is something which I will stitch through the journey. How will I stitch through the journey? I will look at your browsing behavior. I will look at what you search for. I will look at how much time you spent on each of the images that you have seen on my platform. So this is where data and analytics comes into picture. And from an ethics standpoint, of course, protecting this data of the customer is the um, biggest requirement that we have, both from a compliance and an ethical standpoint. Also, what do I recommend from an ethical standpoint? That is extremely critical. Think of it from a VPC space, right? I don't know if you've ever experienced it. There are a lot of women who have come forward and they've spoken about walking into a store, trying to buy something, and having to experience, body dysmorphia, or having to experience, some sort of negativity around their skin tone. It is unfortunate, but all of us have gone through that, right? How do I not do that in my recommendation engine? Because my recommendation engine also learns from my pattern, right? It learns from the data that you are going to feed into it. My customer has been consistently buying medium size tops from me. Let's assume a situation like that. Now my customer is browsing a brand which in general has one size smaller from the standard brands. Take an example, let's say your I don't know, maybe your hip size has to be a certain circumference for something to be called a medium. Now here's this particular brand for whom the medium is always 2 inches lower. So I, as a platform, know that this brand makes products in such a way where the product size, whatever they call as medium, actually translates to body size of small, or
Hmm.
translates to a so if a customer who has constantly bought medium from me buys this medium, they are going to return it to me. It's not going to fit them. Now how do I make the recommendation to the customer that you buy a size large for this brand?
Yeah.
So this is where the ethics comes in, that instead of making the recommendation from a product size standpoint, let me make the recommendation from a body measurement standpoint. This is the ethical angle. How do I not bring in body dysmorphia? How do I be sensitive towards skin tones? How do I be sensitive towards different needs of different set of customers? This is where the ethical aspect comes in, along with obviously the compliance of saving your data.
Yeah, I think this example that you give me, I've seen it. Like, I mean, I buy from, like, I think especially H&M. I don't know if it is H&M or Zara, but one of them I know. Like, they will have this written over there that this particular shirt is generally one size bigger, or like, so we would recommend one size down, or this is a little tighter, so we would recommend like one size up. So I've actually seen those kind of recommendations. So that sort of, yeah, it's a very good example of tying personalization to sort of data, right? The other thing I also wanted to get into is, we are in the world of Gen AI, right? Like you said, ChatGPT and Gemini can give you Python codes, SQL queries, and what. Do you worry that data analytics as a field would not be as relevant, say, 20 years down the lane, right? Because we see the way Gen AI is growing and being able to decipher data and give you conclusions. How do you see that impacting data analytics, as a field overall in the future? And would that even exist, or would it be maybe one person to, like, prompt the AI and sort of, or verify the AI, right? Like, to just confirm, okay, whatever the AI has given, it makes sense or whatever. How do you see that sort of generative AI panning out with data analytics?
See, my favorite example is, did calculators kill accountants? No, right? Enabled us. This is exactly what it's going to happen. The artificial aspect of the intelligence is going to help us become more productive if it is leveraged correctly. Today, imagine you can very easily hire people from much more diverse backgrounds without worrying how they are going to learn coding, because A, learning coding has become simpler, B, coding itself has become simpler thanks to the kind of productivity tools that we have in place. Now, being able to hire people from diverse backgrounds is only going to give you more diverse perspectives and going to improve the kind of problem solving that you are able to do. So, Gen AI is not going to replace what we do; it is going to modify what we do. That is my belief. So there is no point resisting the fact that Gen AI is around. It is going to be there, right? Like it's like resisting wheels because you have ox. cart to ride. Doesn't make sense, right? Why would I resist the motor engine? So it has to be used, leveraged in such a way that I focus on the fundamental skills of an data and analytics team. The fundamental skills of an data and analytics team is not to crunch the data, is not to query or pull the data, it is to make sense of the data. Now we are also seeing a lot of productivity tools which are able to make, like, first degree sense of the data. It's going to it's going to look at the data, and it's going to call out basic insights and tell you that, hey, your sales is up by so and so, so many customer acquisition has gone up and all of that. Great. It gives you the first level of what. It doesn't tell
Right.
you so what. It doesn't tell you now what. That so what
Hmm.
and what is where more of our time will go. And that can only happen when you are able to marry the business domain understanding, the fundamental customer understanding, your environmental understanding, and the data that you see in front of you to draw the conclusion. So I don't think data and analytics is going to become irrelevant. Of course, the shape and form is going to change. The shape and form has been constantly changing. I mean, when I started my career 15 years back, it used to look different. Today, it looks different. So I don't think it's going to replace it. It's going to change the form.
Makes sense. Indrani, I mean, now I'll just touch upon something. I think that's a topic very close to our heart. About women in the tech space, right? You work in a firm which is I'm just gonna stereotype a bit and say that is more more used by at least women consumers. Uh, has as a woman in this in going through this journey and who's done so well, have there been situations where you have faced challenges? How has your journey been, and how has it been being in a space where there are more men, right? How has your journey been, and is there anything specific you would like to tell women who are navigating this?
Yeah, I think you rightly said this is a topic very close to our heart, and you and I have spoken a lot about it as well. Uh, See, I think all of uh, all of humanity has always gone through s- some stage of evolution or the other, right? We have always wanted to do better than what we are doing today. That has been the driving factor of our species. And as women who have chosen non-traditional careers in tech, we have also gone through our fair share of ups and downs, our fair share of challenges. And I don't even look at those challenges from a standpoint of malice, that people are doing this out of malice. A lot of time they just don't know what else to do. They just don't know how to react to it. So yes, it is very, very common for me to walk into meeting rooms where I'm the only female. Uh, and it's also very common that you go to conferences and you go to these networking sessions, and you are always introduced as a female leader in tech and not
Yeah,
a leader in tech, right? The pet
yeah,
peeve.
correct.
But I try to take them in my stride, because somebody before me, some female before me, has opened doors for me, so that when I chose to take STEM or not to take STEM, it wasn't a taboo. Uh, when I choose to be in this space and when I choose to make my voice heard without my gender being the driving factor there, I am trying to open more doors. As the next batch of women who are coming after me, when we bring in our authentic selves to work, and when we question that, why does things only have to be a certain way and why can't it be a little more inclusive, we are opening more doors. So it's a series of doors getting opened. I Even if I look at my own 15-year journey, things have changed a lot. I worked with some incredible men, who have been very, very supportive, vocal, and they've been champions of trying to bring in this equity. One very fundamental aspect which I really try to kind of have a lot of understanding and discussions about is styles of leadership. If you see how women lead versus how men lead, there is no right or wrong. The approaches are different, and I think fundamentally we all get exposed to that when we get exposed to our parents, you would always see how your father does things versus your mother does things, right? We keep talking about things being done in a man's way or a woman's way. End of the day, there are certain energies or attributes which are masculine, certain
Of
energies or attributes which are feminine, and we have actually both of them, all of us, irrespective of our physiological genders. So somehow our boardrooms have been dominated a lot more by the masculine energies compared to the feminine ones. I think all of us owe it to ourselves and to the generations after us, as well as the ones who fought before us, to have the feminine energies and the feminine point of view being respected, being heard. And for me, that is something which, I would like to keep working on, and I would like to keep bringing to the forefront. uh, so yeah, I mean, in a long story short, challenges are definitely there. I don't ignore them. Ignoring them, not talking about them, is basically saying that, just accept things as they are and move on. I would rather acknowledge them. I would talk about them, and then I would like to bring in my way, of course, with the evidence that, the way I'm trying to do it has the best interests of the firm, is going to be able to sustain itself, but I'm going to bring my authentic self to work, and then kind of, navigate it from there.
very well put, Indrani. I totally agree. Even I mean, I think you do face these, very commonsensical situations, sort of, where, because you're a woman, you're treated slightly differently in a nice or whatever manner, right? But I saw, like, even I try to, like, take it in a stride, because I sort of get that some, like, often it is not coming from a place of malice. It is just out of habit, right? It's purely that what people are used to, and then when they see a difference, they sort of call it out, and it's just that. I think we are almost at the end of our discussion, Indrani. What does the future look like for you, and what is it that you're looking forward to? Because I feel like you are at a place which a lot of people might already consider that, uh, you know, um, wow, she's done so much. But knowing you, I'm sure you have a lot of things ahead in mind, in terms of, you know, so what is it that you're looking most forward to? What is the future that you're sort of, if you are planning for yourself in general?
Well, I think the one driving force for me, which has always been there, is I like bringing in change and influence, right? So, and I am in a field which is constantly evolving. So, which means I get to learn constantly. I get to, mold myself and my ways of thinking constantly. And I'm also in a function which can be a completely silent participant, a silent function in any company, or it can be sitting right at the table and telling you, the what's and how's and when's. And that's the journey that I love making. So I think I'll continue to do that. That's what I endeavor to do. Um, I have always been very fortunate with the kind of teams I have built over the years across companies. Uh, my style of leadership is um, it is driven a lot by the personal connect that I share with my team members, particularly, the ones who work very, very closely with me. And that's something I really cherish. In fact, if I look back and if you ask me about the best parts of my journey, yes, they have been the kind of cool problems I have solved, the kind of impact stories I gave you, of course, the financial aspect of my work. But I think the most important, the most cherished part are the people I have met, and the careers that I have witnessed, the mentorship that I have received, and the mentorship that I have had the privilege to give. And that's something which I will continue to do, because I feel end of the day, it's all of us are carrying that torch, and it's our job to make sure that if someone's light is dimming, we just give them a little bit more of the flame, right? So that's pretty much what I hope to do.
Very well said, Indrani, and I think you're doing an incredible job of that, right? So really thankful to have you here, and I'm sure this podcast will be very useful for people who are trying to understand what data analytics is, whether it is from an organization standpoint, if they want to actually incorporate data analytics as a actual team, who would do that. And also, I think for people who want to venture into this career, understand, how they could potentially go about it. So it's been a very fruitful discussion, Indrali. Thank you so much for being here, and it's really been a pleasure to, talk with you and understand this entire space.
Thank you so much. As I said, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And we both were discussing something which we are so passionate about. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. And I'm so happy that you have built this platform where we can share our stories, as well as you are creating such a mouthpiece for the next generation, for the larger audience. So thank you so much for doing this.
Total pleasure. Thank you so much, Indrani.